Welcome to Inside Style. I am your host, George Worrell. Thank you for tuning in today. I'm excited, as always, about our show. Have you thought about branding? Have you thought about business strategy? And have you thought about being or having a life coach? We're going to cover all of those subjects here today. We are welcoming to the show the president and CEO of the DC Chamber of Commerce, Ms. Angela Franco. Angela, welcome.
Thank you so much, George. Very, very happy to be here.
Yeah. Oh, and when I read your bio, I was so impressed about all the work that you've done in different communities. And I want to talk about what brought you to this journey. When did you think about leadership and, kind of molding and helping people's lives? Was it as a little girl? Did you see, what was your mentor? Was it at home? How was it? How did it get started?
So, I grew up in a family where education was a big, important area of our daily conversation. My father was an educator. Mm-hmm. My mother was a journalist. And we always had very in-depth conversations. And I always felt like a connection with people, like since I was a little girl. Mm-hmm. And, but I was very shy. Mm-hmm. I was very insecure. And I was one of those girls that, I don't know, that was not like outgoing, going out and talking to anybody. And still to this day, I'm not, even though I'm in a leadership position and I've had lately that kind of, I think I know what brought me there, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But I was shy. So, having a little bit of insecurity in your life, I think is a gift, because what it brings to your life, it brings that thoughtfulness. It brings about taking the best out of yourself, working on yourself, not thinking that you have everything set
and together,
to be successful. And when I was like 24, 25, I started doing a lot of personal development. Like I felt, when you have, they always talk about the trees that they move, but they don't fall. So I felt like I needed to work in my inside. In my inner self. And starting to feel that up, that regardless what happened, I would stay strong. And I started to do a lot of personal development, therapy. I believe in therapy all the time. It's not because I'm sick or whatever. It's just because I think that we all need it. It helps you grow. It helps you grow. It helps you overcome obstacles. It helps you understand your childhood. I mean, a lot of the things that sometimes we don't want to confront. And I started that process, and since then I have never stopped. And the more I go, the more like life puts me like in leadership positions. It's not something that I said, oh, I'm going to be a leader, I'm going to be the greatest leader. I just think that working in my inner self is what really has brought me to different positions
and
of
starting
leadership.
That as an early age, what was it that you thought that would be good for you to identify those things?
Because I was very emotional. I was one of those people that reacted instead of responding. And still, don't think that that never goes
Well, sometimes
away.
that's good. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes you have to react to a situation, but yes. Knowing when to and when not to.
Exactly. Or maybe being conscious, maybe I'm reacting.
Okay. But you know that. You can identify that.
You can identify it. But I was like, why do I get so emotional? And on top, I was like insecure. Like, like I would go out and I wouldn't show up in that way that people looked at me. Because, after a meeting, my friends would say, oh, Angela, they thought you were great, you were fun, you were funny. And I was like, really? I don't believe it. So all those inconsistencies, that's what made me take action and say, okay, there's something I need to do.
And that is me.
And that is me. It's within me. And I was like, a friend of mine, I always remember this friend of mine, she and I grew up together. We were friends. We're friends since we're 10 years old. Okay. But we came from different households. My family was very stable. We were 6 children. Her family was divorced. Her mother was not. It was just a different family. And she always told me, she's like, Angela, you know what? Since you don't have any problems, you have to invent them. And I always keep that in my mind. And it's true. Sometimes we invent or we create drama where it's not.
Because it all starts here.
It starts here. And then, as you grow, and as I've grown as a leader, I've been learning to listen to my intuition. and say, okay, is this something that I really feel, or is this something that I'm acting up upon? And then if you really have that intuition, you have to act upon it. And that's what takes you into leadership, what takes you into transforming communities, into transforming people, and transforming you.
What was your first job that you were like in leadership and you was like, ooh, I think I can do this?
I think that my first job in really leadership, that I remember that I started to embrace it, was when I ran the Hispanic Chamber, when I was the president of the Greater Washington Hispanic Chamber.
Let's talk about that for a moment. What guided you to go there and the need for that type of leadership in that community?
Just God put me there. I always think that He put me there because it was not my intention to be there. Like, it was not my intention to move to the United States.
Okay.
So I just, even in a place in my life that I'm do every day the best I can, but I'm open to opportunities, possibilities,
travel.
I had just my son. I had just my son. He was a month old, and then a friend of mine called me, and she's like, I put your resume as the new president of the Hispanic Chamber. I had talked to some people about, wanting to shift, wanting to look for something new. So I opened the space for that. But then once the person knew, she called me, and I said no because I was afraid. I was like, that's too hard. How am I going to do it? I don't know. And she's like, Angela, you can do this. And she says, and on top, you cannot say no, because I'm moving to another place. So it was like I didn't have a choice. I started, and I did that as an interim, like for 7-8 months. And then I said, I love these. I'm just going to stay, and I'm going to...
What were the needs? What were the needs that you saw that would help engage your membership, and that, that sector needed you in your leadership?
Yeah. I think that a lot of these organizations, what they need is a leader that is present, that is real, that is genuine, that has the right intentions, that is not about them, but is about their members and the community they serve. And I think that's the first step in understanding when you see somebody that attracts people, that is a convener, is because it's really about the people you're helping. And I grew up with that sense of service. I grew up in a family that my father especially was dedicated to serving others. That was his life, transforming others people's lives through education. And that was my approach. I was like, let me see what we can do, what opportunities there are. And then the more I explore, like the entrepreneurship side, the more opportunities I see, the more fascinated I am about it. Because entrepreneurs, they put their spirit, they put their money, they put their families, they engage everybody.
And they're coming from other places. Like, I don't know what it would be like to move to another country. I've visited other countries, but it's different than living in another country, coming from someplace else. And my accountant, who's from El Salvador, and we're very close, and she talks about that will, and she talks about fitting in and English and all of those things. There's so many things that in your mind will tell you that you're not going to succeed, but you're there. Do you think that was part of your job to say, hey, you're here, I'm here to help you to make sure that you get an equal share of the pot that everybody else is getting?
Exactly. And I didn't look at it like, like you deserve. I looked at it like we have to prepare ourselves to be competitive. It's like I always call crossing the line. That is basically when you're an immigrant. And I came as an immigrant. I mean, I was a citizen because I was born here, but I came as an immigrant. I had to start from scratch. So even though I didn't have to go through that immigration process. I went through the process as an immigrant. That is finding your first job, getting to know somebody, the struggles that you go through. And I always talk about crossing that line. And crossing that line is when you understand that you're in a different country. You learn the language. You never go into a house and the first thing you do is open the refrigerator, right?
That's it, yeah.
Okay, that's the same thing that you should never do as an immigrant. You go, you see, you get to know the people, you understand the culture. And then little by little, you open spaces for yourself and for others. So I always keep that in mind. I always keep in mind that I'm a minority, that I'm a woman, that I'm an immigrant, and I'm representing all that as I walk through life.
What was the thing that you were most proud of as your tender there? Like that one thing that's like, I'm glad I could make that happen.
At the Hispanic Chamber?
Yes.
I think that one of the things that I really, really felt proud was creating the business expo. We created an expo when my son was born, so I always think it's 14 years ago, that still is going, where we had all resources for small businesses, and on top of that, we did matchmakings. So we were matching companies with opportunities. And so if you were a marketing company, we will put you in front of Washington Gas when they were looking for a minority-owned business. That was a very, very special program that we put together.
Well, what brought you to the D.C. Chamber of Commerce, and what is the difference? Like, how do you see how do they differ between the
Hispanic Chamber and the D.C. Chamber?
Yeah.
They're very different. But I ended up at the D.C. Chamber. So, how did I end? No.
Was it another like, hey, we need somebody to?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Kind of. I think that my leadership style is a leadership style that transforms culture, that brings light, that brings clarity. And, I see myself doing a lot of those transformations as I go. And I think that the DC Chamber was in a place where we needed to have that kind of leadership. And so I've been there for years. It's very different from the Hispanic Chamber. The Hispanic Chamber was built to do international, right? And it's a regional organization. The DC Chamber is a chamber that is solely dedicated to the District of Columbia. Okay. To the small business community in the District of Columbia. The DC Chamber is a big organization in advocacy, on policy, legislation. The Hispanic Chamber doesn't get involved there. And the DC Chamber is a very important chamber for the United States. We're considered one of the top 10 chambers by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. So it's just a very important player when you look at it from a national perspective and international, because wherever you go, you talk about the DC Chamber and everybody's like, we want to work with you. So we are in the middle of the best city in the world, and then an organization that represents the small business community in the District of Columbia.
So we would encourage businesses, small or large. Why would you want them to, or why would we want to join the DC Chamber? Will you be our advocate? Could you explain that a little more about?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So the DC Chamber has like three main pillars. One is education, advocacy, and networking.
Okay.
So we have education, anything that the city has, any programs, we support, spreading the word. We also support businesses when they're starting up. We have a partnership with the Small Business Development Center at Howard University. So that's all, education. The second pillar is networking. So one thing is you can open your business, you can incorporate, you can have an accountant, but if you don't have clients, then you're not going to get any income, right? So networking, that's what it does. It connects you with other people that think like you. Like sometimes when you go into, let's say, work with government, the mindset is different from the entrepreneur, right? We entrepreneurs think like we have to go meet people, make our passion and monetize our passion. Because I can tell you that 95% of the entrepreneurs I meet, they have a passion for what they do. And then the last pillar is advocacy. So basically, we follow legislation in the council that can affect the small business community. And we educate them on that as well.
Okay. Ooh. So aside from looking at where we're doing our guests, and it just stood out how your photographs and how you have positioned yourself and how you look. Can we talk a little bit about how you think businesses, men and women, should prepare themselves fashion wise. You know, a lot of times I hear people, I want to do my own thing. How important is it that I know it's very important to you, we'll talk about that, but also too, to your members and people who are entrepreneurs about how you look?
Yeah, I think that, I never thought about it. I grew up with that because I never was allowed to wear sweatpants on a Sunday at my house. My mother was kind of formal, so I grew up in that formality. But I think that visual is very important. And it's not only the way you look, it's the materials you present, it's how you present yourself. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It has to be harmonic. It has to suit your personality. So I was reading an article, I was sharing with you earlier, I was reading an article the other day about dressing, dressing for what you do. So if you are not comfortable with what you put on in your daily job every day, that there's a disconnect between who you are and what you do. In my case, I found my own style. I like what I like. I don't like suits. I feel older when I wear a suit. I like dresses and fun, fun clothes, different, and sometimes I put a little piece of jewelry. I used to sell jewelry, so I have an understanding for how jewelry looks, what looks good, what doesn't look good. There's a minor difference in what you wear, but jewelry brings a lot into any outfit. But
Okay, but that's a lot. I mean, because it's that fine line of what I've always told clients is trends are something that you should just look at but not follow. You should know more about your personal style than the person selling it to you. So once you, like you've just told us, knew what looked good on you, you could go buy it and form yourself so that you're happy about it when you walk out the door. There's a difference when you're not sure about what you're wearing and how it looks, as opposed to being sure and knowing there is a certain something that you have inside that you can project that sets you aside from the person who's maybe interviewing for the same job that you are doing. So has that always been your passion too, to just kind of look at?
I mean, little by little, I'm using a little more of fancy clothes. I was very plain, and when you wear something that is not necessarily within, you have to have the personality to do it. You have to learn your body, feel comfortable with your body. So if I always say, if you're not comfortable, do what you need to do. Exercise or eat better. There's so many ways that you can take care of yourself, and it doesn't have to be perfect. It has to be you. It has to be like that you feel comfortable with it.
I've read a lot of bios from CEOs and presidents. I've not seen that I can remember being a certified life coach.
Yeah.
Can we talk about that a little bit, which was intriguing to me?
Yeah.
How did that start, and how does that work for you?
So I've always had something in my soul that is more about connecting from the soul than connecting from the mind. And when I started all this process of personal development, the more I do it, the more I'm attracted to it. The more I want to learn, the more I want to evolve. And when I did that coaching, I said, I didn't think I was going to do a practice having, one-on-one clients. I said, I think this is something that is going to help me to put some conversations in perspective. When you're coaching somebody in something that is black and white, you were supposed to wear a white shirt and you wear a black shirt, that's easy. But when you have to do coaching to somebody or feedback about soft skills or actions or attitudes, that's really when you need to have that connection and those leadership skills to guide that person through. There's so many people that haven't, and that's why I did it, and I loved it, and it's given me great tools to help. And after that, I did another speaking with John Maxwell, and I try to do every year something. Because it helps me, but it's most importantly, it helps me help
Others. But
Others.
so helping yourself, that enables you to help others.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right.
If you're the most important person that needs to be in a good place is you. It's not a selfish. I'm not talking about being selfish. I'm thinking about if you're in a position that you're helping others, you need to be conscious that you are in a good place and that what you're going to give is the best of you in the moment, right? Because we're always evolving and maybe I will shift and change more, but in the moment that you're conscious that you're giving the best out of you.
Do you see, how would you describe being a woman in leadership, Latino, and making decisions when you see people who, or you're dealing with people who are not used to seeing or dealing with women of color, or just any of that? How does that, how do you work with that? Or does it matter? Or do you just kind of sense it and move straight ahead? That's one of the questions, because we interview a lot of women, and I'm always interested. Every answer has been different. So I'm interested in what your perspective is on it.
So I don't really think about it much. What I do is that I'm well prepared. And if I don't have anything to say, I don't say anything. I don't have to have the last word. I don't have to have the right answers. There's some areas that I know, some areas that I don't. So it's just, that's really my approach. If there's something that I don't know, instead of trying to find an answer, what I say is that I don't know, let me get prepared, let me study a little more, and then I'll get back to you.
Are there different parts of you that, I know for me, there's an aggressive piece, there's a kind of calm piece. I always thought I was just like kind of one way, but how do you see yourself? Do you see yourself multifaceted in your thinking and in certain areas in your leadership, in your decision-making process?
Depends on the situation. I look at every situation individually. I look also, I mean, you have some things that are the facts. So these are the facts, right? So this is whatever. The other thing is your intuition. The other thing is the energy, right? And the intentions. Look, I just described them, but it's the facts, really. The energy, the intentions, and the, what was the other? And the intuition. So I look at all of those and I'm like, okay, let me look at these, at the whole picture and see what's really going on, what do I sense, what are the facts, and then we make a decision.
What do you do in your downtime? Do you travel, read? If you read, what was the best book that you've read lately? If you've seen something, what is it that puts you in that exhale moment?
I do a lot of Reiki. I'm Reiki too, and I'm taking classes to continue to grow there. I read, depends on the moment I'm in. Like sometimes I walk a lot, I exercise, I like riding my bike. This weekend, for example, was a weekend for me of introspection, so I read a lot, I slept. I had a Reiki session and I read a beautiful book. And that depends on the moment I'm in. Like
Okay.
I don't have something that is specific. I spend a lot of time with my son and I love it. I cook. I travel.
What's your best dish?
My best dish, I think that my best dish is ajiaco. It's a Colombian soup and I love it.
What are the ingredients?
Potatoes. Chicken, potatoes, and corn, and you serve it with cream and.
Oh, I can make that.
Oh, it's wonderful.
And this is the best time for it.
Yes.
So in wrapping up, I could talk to you forever.
Thank you.
What would you leave with someone who has had a career and decided that they want to change? It changed in COVID. Some young person who's saying, I really don't know. Some young woman or some little boy. What would you leave with us that would be some sage advice to think about in going in a career?
Yeah. So I'm going to say two things. The first one, we all have a path. We all have a purpose, and it's up to us to find it. And the second recommendation is put a list together of 10 people that you feel can see beyond what you see, and sit with them and talk to them. Do an informational interview and say, listen, this is where I am. This is what I like to do. Sometimes we don't know exactly what we want to do or where we're going to end, but we know what we like or what we're good at. And then put a list together of those 10 people and start doing informational interviews. And all the opportunities that I've had in my career, I've done them that way. I put a list together of 10 people that are above me, that can see beyond what I see, and that can help me and guide me in the next step.
I love it. I love it. We have been talking. How can we get in contact with you on social media?
So I have my Instagram account is at A Franco, and then V as in Victor, ASCO.
Okay.
And then I have my LinkedIn is Angela Franco, and I have Facebook as well.
Okay,
So
and they can go to the website for DC Chamber.
they can go to the website for the DC Chamber of Commerce, and my information is there as well.
Perfect, perfect. We have been talking to Angela Franco, who is the president and CEO of the DC Chamber of Commerce. This has been a wonderful interview. Thank you. You'll have to come back because we have to talk a little more about fashion. But thank you for tuning in to Inside Style. I am your host, George Worrell, and remember, real style starts with being comfortable in your own skin, and we'll see you next time.